Hello and welcome to the Complete Agent podcast, where each week we aim to educate and entertain our industry. This week we're not joined by David Warburton, who unfortunately has had to rush off and pass his child off to mother-in-law's because Mrs. is not very well this week. So it's myself, Ian Story, and we've got a very special guest this week, Mr. Matthew Addison Smith. So let's start with weeks. How's your week been, Ian?
Brilliant. We're on track to have our best month ever on exchanges, which is saying something considering the year that we had last year. So that's superb. And then a fantastic run on new sales agreed this week and new listings. Phil, I think, has listed 5 so far this week, ranging from 500 to 900 grand. So that lovely sweet spot in the market at 2%. And then I've put a couple on myself as well, sort of more than $1 million kind of range, one just over. So, I mean, brilliant. I think the market's in really good shape. You know, having said that, of course, there's loads of stock set on the market because it's probably overpriced or undermarketed or both, as I'm sure is the case wherever you are in the country. But generally, very good, JK. Yeah. How about you, mate?
Yeah, I was actually looking at our Rightmove listings earlier, and I think of the 66 we've now currently got available for sale, we've only got actually 19 available. So I mean, that tells its own story, doesn't it, in terms of what the market's doing and where. But then equally, as you said, if you look locally on Rightmove, the balance of stock is still way over 50% in favour of what's available. And as you said, a lot for sale, a lot on the market, undermarketed, overpriced, underserviced. I went to one yesterday that I've just took on. I know we talk about the gold dust, 850, 2%. They're on the market last year. Didn't really have an awful lot of interest. And he works for a wealth management company. So he was very data analytical, statistically driven. You know, and he literally came in. So I met Mrs. He walked in the room and just said, "Right, so what's the average time to find a buyer at the moment?" I was like, "Right, gosh, 60 days." He goes, "Okay, and what about from sale agreed to completion?" It's like 154 days. Right, okay. And then he started asking me all these other questions like, "What's your success rate?" And it was just it's like that appointment was made for me, and I was like 88.12% as of 2024. I said, but the average in the area is 48%. And he was like, right, okay.
He wasn't expecting. He didn't think you'd know.
But then he also said to me, what's the market doing in the area? I said, well, look, in this particular area, so obviously we pulled the data loft off, and said, look, from Jan 2020, the peak in this area in particular for a detached house was August 22. Obviously in line with the whole trust and Kwarteng fiasco, as we love to call it. I said, but you can see it only really tailed off 6 to sort of 12 months after the interest rates really kind of kicked in the market.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see we've gone from X amount of square foot and then to this. And then I printed off, obviously, the last 12 months of transactions between 750 and sort of, I think, 1.5. Gave them the average pound per square foot, max pound per square foot, minimum pound per square foot, extrapolated it against their square footage of the house, and said, look, realistically, based on the data, it sits somewhere between here and here, which would probably bring us around 850. They said ideally they want to achieve 865. Classic, great. Well, not too far out here. So, let's go offers over 850 and see where the market takes us. However, if it doesn't happen at 850, we do maybe need to look at maybe realign our expectations and coming back down to 8. They bear in mind these people want to upsize, so I came across these people because they're looking to spend around 2.5, 3. And I said, look, you need to, if you need to sell this house to move on, I can't get you into anything off market until you're sold because people won't take you seriously. I can't get you into the doors of these houses off market. Just talking about week really quickly again. One that I think I spoke to you guys about last week. I'm trying to wrap up off market at 1.3. Trying to get a show-stopping offer from the buyer. We're kind of at loggerheads at the moment, but I could be in a position hopefully by Monday where we've got hopefully one wrapped up at 1.3, a small chain behind it as well. A couple of bits and pieces at 6 and 700, not million. Be nice. Hopefully, going to exchange on our £3.5 million sale in the next week and a half, which will be good. And as similar to you, mate, we're going to have hopefully the biggest. I mean, we're forecasted for a huge exchange month. Everything is just about there. All this stamp duty business where all these first time buyers lower down in the chains just trying to get their ducks in a row and get everything ready to go. It's just a bit chaotic at the moment. Like some of the agents that we're dealing with just haven't got a clue, and it's just so frustrating. You deal with it, you get to a certain level, and the standards of professionalism are quite clearly a level above, and then you deal with the ones below. They haven't got sales progression. They haven't got anyone really that knows the sale process, and it's just frustrating trying to almost pick up the slack, do their job. And we managed to get details of one first-time buyer in the chain because we had them registered, and we managed to speak to them direct and tell them what they needed to do. They've actually want to complete on this house and avoid £6,000 off extra stamp duty, but every time they ring the agent that they're dealing with, they haven't got a clue what's going on.
No.
Someone will get back to them. And that's where so many deals fail and why there is only a 48% success rate nationally. Anyway, that aside, Matthew, how's your week been?
Nice and busy at the moment. Some really exciting stuff coming up. I would say it's just over 50% of our stock is entirely off market. Deliberately so. We're trying to be a little bit more discerning with the kind of person that we put through the door, and it allows us to be a bit pickier, I think, with who we're actually showing a property to. But yeah, a few off-market views this week. 3 at a house that's on the market at 4 million. Super pretty, one of the most beautiful cottages you'll ever see. If I do put it online, I'll send it out to as many people as I can, and you'll swoon over it. It's gorgeous, dream home for most people. And got an instruction at 5 million, which I'm out at actually later on today, which is really exciting. So yeah, a few little bits there, which is great. Making some plans for some of the higher end stuff that we're working on over the coming months. A marketing campaign for a property we're dealing with at 12.5 million, and making a sort of a route for that. And yeah, just the pace obviously is a little bit slower because you're dealing with a larger value and a client that wants more of your time, I think is probably a fair way of describing it. So it tends to be slightly more involved than time I've spent on properties at a lower value where you're maybe able to turn them over a little bit quicker. You have to give that client a bit more time and attention sometimes than you'd want. You do that, and you get the right result for them. So a lot of it is sitting down and just reconvening with people and going through a marketing strategy. But good week, which will continue on the vein of the last couple of months we've had, which have been a really, really good start to the year. So yeah, can't complain.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining us today. So
quite all right.
Just to drill down, obviously you're really well known in kind of the Surrey area and sort of super prime space around there. For anyone that is listening, obviously this kind of goes all over the country. We have got some super prime agents that listen to this in London. We've got agents that listen to us in Yorkshire, like all over the country. For anyone that doesn't know who you are, like what's your name? Where'd you come from?
Yeah. So Matthew Addison Smith. I work with my good friend and colleague Trevor Kearney, who founded the private office real estate last year. Spent the last few years at Savills. Before that, an independent in the Surrey area, and then before that, countrywide, to be fair, as many of us did.
Yeah.
And then learned how to sell quite a few houses in my time there. Core market for me is Surrey. I live in Hazelmere, which is southwest Surrey. It's slap bang in the middle of the Surrey Hills and the South Downs. So 2 national landscapes, really expensive, affluent, lovely areas to live, and therefore on my doorstep is a load of nice property that I can go and sell. So it works really well for me. And over the past, I'd say 6 months or so now that I've been with the private office, it's taking a step up from even where I was at Savills and dealing with a much higher caliber of stock, clientele that are dealing with global properties. We've got stuff all around the world, which is really, really exciting. And just taking things onto sort of the next level for the clients and for me personally.
So can we just go for, because obviously I was looking at you probably noticed, because I know you love LinkedIn, as do I. I was stalking you on LinkedIn this morning before our chat, just to see kind of where you come from, because I think the perception of a lot of people is they think people that work in the super prime market went to school and all of a sudden daddy jumped me into here, and then you've definitely, like, looking at your CV, what I think is impressive is that you've obviously gone through the ranks of various different roles, and you've kind of earned your stripes before stepping into super prime.
Absolutely.
And one of the things we talk about on the pod, because there's a lot of like different models out there. We did like a partner agent mini series, and a lot of people think they can just do agency and just jump into it as a kind of a lifestyle business. Whereas you've earned your stripes. So it'd be good to know if you're happy to share, like, just kind of where you kind of came from and how that kind of developed onto where you're at today.
Yeah, of course. It's something that as a team we're all quite proud of. I mean, I use Trevor again as the example, and Sophie, who's our head of brand and marketing. They grew up on a council estate in Surrey, and not a fantastic school, and have done really well themselves as well. So as a team, none of us come from particularly sort of uber affluent background. I'm state educated. Father worked in financial services, wasn't a multi-millionaire banker, but worked in financial services. We grew up in a fairly nice place, can't complain, but state educated. Went off to university in Cardiff in South Wales, and got into a state agency there, and started selling Cardiff city centre flats and houses at 80 to 120,000 pounds. I think my first sale was 110,000 pounds.
Yeah,
it wasn't a lot of money.
A big time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm driving around in my Mrs. Ford KA to do viewings. It's just different world, right? And worked my way up there. So I got promoted, I think, every year and a half, coming up to 2 years, and went to a more senior selling role, then a listing role, then I ran a listing team that covered a sort of a region, and I went back into branch management. And then eventually in 2016, 2017, myself and my wife decided to move back to Surrey. We wanted to start a family, and schooling here is very, very good. That's part of the reason that people want to live in Surrey. So we moved back within Countrywide and ended up running an office here, senior branch manager for a brand within Countrywide here for 2 years. Went off to an independent firm who were sort of a step up from that. And we're dealing with slightly more expensive properties in Guildford, which is the big sort of county town and busier place and more of a city market, I would say. And then ended up tete-a-tete with Savills a few times, and very well respected name in the industry, a guy called Ian Camplin. He and I had many a conversation, and eventually he persuaded me it'd be a good idea to come over to Savills. So I did that, and then spent the last 3.5, 4 years there before moving over with Trevor to deal with this end of the market here. So very definitely, you're absolutely right. Taking steps up that ladder, working my way up, and I think it's important. I really do.
Even give you a good grounding, a good basis for selling. And I think the other thing as well is lead generation is something that I think I really wanted to kind of talk to you about. Was in obviously you've got Prime, which is got I guess Prime 1 to 10 million is what would be called Prime, and then Super Prime is that level above. One of our members in TCA is in central London, and I know he's had a few Super Prime listings off the back of like direct mail and letters that go out. It'd be interesting to know. So, Super Prime listings, does that come from sort of direct mail, or does that come from networking, or does it a bit of both?
Yeah, no, very rarely direct mail.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is, and I don't send a lot of direct mail. I will admit, I did do it at Savills because you're dealing with core prime stock. I would say somewhere between 2 and 5. General barometer of a super prime market is the top 1% of the market. Depending on where you are in the country, that varies. Central London is 10 million plus. It can dip depending on where you are. Rule of thumb really is you look at where the big corporates have their country department cut-off point, and that tends to be a Savills or a KF is about 4 to 5 million upwards. So that's the part that you're entering into the prime. And obviously above that you enter into the super prime. But that end of the market, A, they're very rarely at the house often. So sending them a letter is kind of pointless. They might not even be there. And B, they're not necessarily going to pick it up, take the time to look at it. They might not even see it themselves. They might have a housekeeper. It's not as impactful. These are the kind of people who often are not the people that you would think would own a property. So your celebrities, sports people, whatever. They probably aren't your super prime market. Those super prime markets are finance world, tech, crypto. They are people that you probably never heard of. Being realistic, they're the richest people in the world. They're the people that you often haven't heard of. And that end of the market require a bit of finesse. So, not direct mail, social actually is surprisingly impactful.
Yeah.
Trevor's
finding you, I suppose, being in the right places on social media.
Absolutely.
And then finding, I have found that, there's a few places that we've had in what I suppose you would call the prime markets where we are here at like 2 and 3 million. And so the social media, what's interesting is you get random people with 100 followers that you kind of come across, and they're like, "Oh, hi, yeah, my family are interested in this house." Sometimes it's kind of like the UAE buyers a lot of the time, where they'll message you and say, "My family's interested," and I think someone less experienced would probably just cast it off as a waste of time.
Yeah. They're the more likely buyer.
Yeah.
In a weird way. I'll give you a really good example, actually. There's a chap who's a very close ally of the business, and I won't say his name, but he's a very close ally of the business, and is involved in it in some capacity. He is a multi-millionaire, if not a billionaire at this point, works in the tech industry, and he has a Twitter account with like 8 followers. And we can't follow him. I know him. We can't follow him, but he'll like all my story posts and whatever. He's there and really supportive. He could go out and buy everything that we've got on the market now, twice over.
Yeah.
But he's sort of milling around on Instagram with 8 followers, and actually you have to be careful now when there's a balance between someone who's got 100,000 followers who isn't going to buy anything, and someone who's got 10 but is legitimate, and it's hard to discern sometimes. But social stuff is impactful.
So when we talk about social, which socials are you talking about?
So Instagram has an element of, or a slight air of professionalism to it in a way that I think TikTok personally doesn't. That might be just me. I know some agents do very well through TikTok. It certainly grabs attention. Grant and Mark at Hampton's private office do very well with it. So there is a market for it. Just me, maybe, that isn't quite as bought into it. So Instagram is very definitely one. It's one that we focus on quite heavily. LinkedIn, as you say, I do use it quite a lot. Surprisingly impactful. I don't have the biggest following on there, but I'm putting a house in front of CEOs, financial directors. It's the right market.
100%.
And I make a point of ensuring that the property stuff, maybe not the content, the more lifestyle-y things, that's more Instagrammy, but the property side of it, very definitely on LinkedIn. That's a really powerful one.
I think that LinkedIn is something that everyone seems to say that I'm really good at LinkedIn. But what I say to people is that it's not all about how many likes and comments you get on your posts, because if you imagine on LinkedIn, if you put the right house out there in the universe, people don't want everyone in their grand to know that they are looking for a house at 2-3 million. So they'll I find some of the best posts I have the least engagement on there. But what does happen is I'll get a WhatsApp from somebody random saying, "Hi, saw this on there," or an email saying, "Hi, how the house you just put on LinkedIn, the 3 million XYZ. What's the situation? Can we arrange a viewing?"
The return, I think, is better from LinkedIn actually than perhaps the other platforms, which is funny. Yeah. So I've got twice as many followers on Instagram than I have on LinkedIn. That's the way it goes. But you're absolutely right. I've actually, again, for me personally, and probably for my own mental health, I've turned off likes on my Instagram posts.
Yeah, fair.
It's deliberately not visible, because otherwise I sit there and I think, oh, this one's not as many. Why isn't it as many? Why are people engaging? It's not relevant.
No,
it's how many people have actually viewed it. It's not the engagement rate necessarily that might help you grow, but it's how many people have actually viewed it. And if I'm getting 1,000 people per post, I'm getting 2,000, 3,000 people per post on a good one, let's say.
Yeah.
And I do end up getting calls off people saying, "What's this house that you put on Instagram? Or what's this house you put on LinkedIn?" You think, you haven't watched my story, you haven't liked my post, you haven't commented, but you're calling me off the back of it, so it's working, and I'll keep going.
Yeah, 100%. It's all about that consistency with that, isn't it? So do you think so social media is obviously a big part, I guess, given obviously having met Trevor and I kind of know him through proxy, through Jeff, who works with you guys. Private Office Protects. I guess another big part of it for you guys in Super Prime is networking. Would that be about right to say?
Very definitely. Yeah, absolutely. So we brought a lot of that in-house as a brand. So we have, as you just mentioned, Protect, and we have Lifestyle, which is run by a lady called Alicia Warburton. She's ex-Wasserman Sports, obviously the biggest sports agency in the world. Those two parts of our business refer a huge amount back into us again. The football world in particular is incredibly well serviced by Alicia and Jeff. And those clients will then talk to us off the back of their relationship with them. It keeps it all in-house.
Yeah.
That's been really, really impactful. So a network that, as you all know, knowing Trevor, he has built his name in, to be fair, the North Surrey football world. His market was 5 minutes away from the Chelsea training ground. So obviously knows a lot of their players or ex-players and staff and whatnot. Having that all in one place and dealing with other aspects of their life as well has been a massive benefit to us.
So, in terms of that, obviously that's a great part of network. And you think social media? Is there anything else like in that immediate sphere, or is that generally where the bulk of sort of Super Prime comes from?
Yeah, well, there's the broker side of it as well, which I think is important. The two of you are obviously within a WhatsApp community that I set up called Off Market.
Shall we just before you dive too deep, do you want to just tell everyone about that that's listening and how they can get involved and how they can join? Because I think it's a brilliant group. It's a great idea.
Thank you. That's very kind. So we're now up to, I think, 207 or 209 brokers. It is a broker-focused community. So we don't have, with the exception of one or two that I personally know, we don't have corporate firms in there, big corporate firms. We don't have buying agents. It is a broker-focused community. There's a couple of people in London just to give us a bit of coverage there, but in reality, most of it is outside. And the idea is to give us a breadth of reach directly into each other. So if I have a property, as we've spoken about before, in a property up towards Manchester, I reached out and I said, is anyone covering this area? Has anyone got expertise in this type of property? And we ended up talking, I think for the first time at that point, about an apartment there that someone was selling, which is just over £1 million. And it gave us the ability to talk to people around the country in a direct fashion without having to Google what agents are busy in this area or who deals with this kind of market. It's recommendation or invitation only. And it means that the people in there are trustworthy, like-minded, they're willing to collaborate, they're willing to share fees, and it just works as a network, as a proper community. And it's busy. There's people talking in there. There's some funny stuff happens occasionally, and some amazing properties you get to see all around the country. So it's cool.
Do you think? I'm going to ask this question. I think I kind of know the answer already because you've just kind of briefly mentioned it. But do you think that in the sort of mid to upper end space, agents are much more open to collaboration?
Yeah.
And why do you think that is?
I think what I'm seeing more and more is that, especially in the super prime market, buyers are often represented. So they're represented, either by a broker or by a buying agent. Everyone will have their own list of buying agents. I've got 62 buying agents on a contact list that if a house comes up in Surrey, I can just call them immediately. But it gives me an ability, therefore, to put a property in front of not just my network, but your networks as well. Because there's more people outside of my business than there are within it. So if I can show my house that I'm selling, let's take the one I mentioned to you earlier on at 12.5, to your networks as well. You have buyers that might be looking at that price point. You could come to me either with the idea that you're being paid a fee by that client or to want to share a fee with me. But it allows me scope to show it to people that wouldn't necessarily have considered that price, location, architectural style, whatever it may be. But it just gives me an extra in, and it allows me to put it out to more people who are being more discerning than ever before. They have quite a lot of money to spend. They're willing to employ someone to source them that property. And actually, it kind of helps me then because there's someone else selling it to them. Which is helpful. There's two of us then advising them this might be the right house. It's not just me saying it. There's someone else who's on their side, let's say. Makes a big difference. So there's that aspect of it as well. That top end of the market is often run by two agents working with each other, with a client on either side, rather than one agent in the middle and two clients. It's interesting. It's unfolded like that, but I think that will continue.
I think it helps you justify fees at the upper end as well. Certainly when I'm going through the door of a house that, I like here, the most expensive house really where I am is probably about 4, maybe 5 million max, and that's they're few and far between. Your average kind of prime house where I am is probably between 1.5 and maybe 2.5. But when you're going through the door of these places, like a lot of the, I suppose, more corporate and kind of bigger chain independents are going out there quoting 1%. When we're going out quoting 2 or sometimes 2.5%, you can justify the fee, but so obviously if you get a lucky hit off Rightmove or social media, or someone that's not kind of in your immediate sphere. I mean, one of the things that we do as well is we work with a couple of like wealth managers, so we'll put it out to them if they know anyone that's looking. For example, like so here, Crystal Palace, previously Luton Town, Watford, like a few of those sort of Premier League football clubs. There's a couple of connections I've made kind of off my own back with kind of wealth managers and ex-players, etc., where I can kind of farm that out to them on WhatsApp and it can come back. But if it doesn't, I kind of say to the clients that I'm dealing with, look, I'm not necessarily charging you 2.5%. I might be charging you 1.5% a net or 2% because I might have to share the fee with an agent. If you want me to bring London to your doorstep or Surrey to your doorstep, there's got to be something in, me saying to you, here's 0.25% of 1 million. It's just not going to, get your taste buds tantalised, is it?
It's got to entice you. You're absolutely right. And I think the incentive, therefore, to put it out to other people who sometimes we have to therapy with someone that isn't even a broker. As you say, a financial advisor or they're a wealth manager or a player liaison or something. Do you see what I mean? It's beyond just the estate agency side of things. And you're right, the football market, and particularly the player liaisons at the clubs. Chelsea obviously pay quite a lot of money to a lot of players. So whether or not you're a Chelsea fan, I think you can question sometimes. Yeah, I know you are. The amount of money that's paid out to some of the players. But it gives you an in there to a number of them that they've got a chunk of money to spend. So us going to the player liaisons and talking to them about what's available. Someone comes in on a massive contract, they need somewhere to live. A lot of them rent, admittedly, but those who I think are planning on being here for a bit longer, then will eventually, hopefully, buy somewhere. So it gives us the ability to showcase it to them as well. But the wealth managers and financial advisors is a key one. And those people can open up a world of buying as well.
Yes.
Not just the sales side, but the acquisition side, which is obviously something that we deal with quite heavily.
Yeah.
But half of what we've been doing so far this year probably is on the acquisition side.
Yeah.
And that can often be referred from a financial advisor or wealth manager. And in fact, actually, that's usually a very big end for that end of the market.
They want someone that's professional. I mean, that's one of the things we kind of push as well. So certainly to our members and people, and certainly on this podcast, is being a buying agent for people because they're by representation so few and far between in this country. There's a few, buying agents, and that are in and around kind of London, Surrey area. And there's a few kind of, around us here, but it's not very well kind of known, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And some of the people that I've kind of got networked in with and got to know have been like very open because, when you get to a certain amount of wealth and, you've got, your own business going on, or perhaps, one person I dealt with, a celebrity recently, they don't want to be ringing up, tailors and saying, hi, it's Celine Dion here. I'm interested in viewing the manor house you've got 3.5 million. I mean, not
I can tell you now, I'd have been shocked if I got that call. Yeah.
The thing is, you'd have thought it was a wind up, though, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I want a flat in Cardiff Bay. Are you sure?
Yeah. I was gonna drop a Celine Dion lyric in there, but I thought, I better not. Let's keep it professional. So just going back to that, actually, a question I wanted to ask, just going back a little bit. You cut your teeth in the Cardiff markets, 110 grand flats. What was the kind of catalyst for you to go, and I've had enough of the lower end. Why do I want to work in the upper end of the market?
Yeah. Bluntly, money.
Yeah.
If you think you can sell and without sort of tooting my own horn, I thought I was quite good at it. I won internal awards within the company for the amount that was being instructive when I was listing, and I was quite proud of the work that I was doing. And I thought, you know what, if I can do it at this volume, why not apply it to slightly higher value? And moved back to Surrey again, where it was still a high street agency, but the values were immediately 3 or 4 times higher, just because of the nature of where I was. A village in the Surrey Hills is expensive, and therefore what I was doing was immediately earning more money. So there was that, and then obviously the step up from there is just the amount of exciting places you get to see. Really, I think you get to a point where if you back yourself to go and sell something that's more expensive and potentially could earn more money out of it, then why wouldn't you do it? If you can sell, you want to kind of sell the most expensive thing that you can sell. And that involved obviously moving up in brand, and
Okay, so those of you people that are listening, that obviously there'll be quite a few people that know what prime is. But how would you define what is private office in the property world? How would you explain it, and what kind of distinguishes it from your kind of traditional estate agency?
Yeah, absolutely. So the private office is a private office in name and in nature, and I say the same thing to everybody here. We're not just here to buy or sell a house for you. We want to be there as a point of contact for any aspect of what it is that you want to do with your life, basically. So we've had clients sourcing rare watches. We've had clients looking to have a partnership with a private jet charter, for example. We can put you in touch with foreign exchange, a very big firm who can deal with that straight away. If you want to move your family to Dubai, we can assist with schooling. I mean, it shouldn't be just, I want to sell my house somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I think what and Trevor cottoned onto this before I did, I will admit. But part of the reason the business was formed is his clients and now my clients are global. They want to be wherever. The houses that we're selling are almost never their only house. They have other properties elsewhere. We're dealing with one client who's got many houses in the UK, and they're building 3 in Barbados. But we're dealing with it's super cool. But we're dealing with everything for them everywhere. And they want to buy here, and they want to sell there, and they also want to sell here. And it's just different aspects of it that we can deal with as we go along, and it's really exciting to be able to deal with all of that. So
how does that work? Just I'm intrigued. So if you're at marketing somewhere in Barbados, and someone says they want to view it, do you just hop on a plane and go and show them, or what's the
for the right viewer? Yeah. I mean, there's people. Obviously, I cannot say any names, as you can imagine, but there are people there that you would think are incredibly cool that we're able to show them a property like that. And we will. Finn, who works in our team here, lucky chap, went on a long weekend to do a couple of viewings a few weeks ago. And has done exceptionally well dealing with that property and that site. So. Yeah, we will hop over there for the right person. We have partners that we work with around the world as well, who might be on the ground and pop in day to day to check on that sort of late build process. That one, they might pop in and check how the build is going, or they might be talking to somebody who happens to be there already. But if we want to have a direct hand in something, then we'll make the effort to travel out.
So on like clients and their expectations. So obviously, a lot of these people are kind of ultra high net worth. What would you say they typically expect from a super prime agent? And could you share an example of kind of how you sort of match and exceed their expectations in the super prime space?
Contact, being available when they are available.
Yeah.
Trevor and I were having a conversation with someone 6 months ago now, but it was a house at 55 million. They were in the Middle East, the far east of the Middle East, and we were talking to them at 2:30 in the morning about the property. And I've got young kids. It probably wasn't the most convenient thing to be doing, no. But we kind of have to do it. The expectation is that you are there and you are available to talk to them. Anything that I'm dealing with in Dubai at the moment, I have a lot of property in Dubai and access to a number of things over there. Obviously, the time zone is about 4 hours apart.
Yeah.
By the time I get up in the morning, it's already done midday. So, I have to be up early sometimes to have conference calls with investors or with developers and stuff at the start of their day, so it can be up at 4 to talk to someone. So it's a case of being available when they're available, and also willing to travel. I mean, again, I use Barbados as an example, but there was a week where Trevor had to go to, I think it was Marbella, and then straight back to Barbados. and then back to the UK again to see different clients in quick succession, there's worse places to be sent. Don't get me wrong. But it gives you an example on the expectation that we have from these clients. But we're willing to do it. You have to be willing to do it at that top end of the market and able to service their wants and needs as well, because if we don't do it, someone else will.
Okay, and so here's another question then. So having gone from dealing with Joe Bloggs and his 1-bedroom flat above the Chippy in Cardiff, and the thing is, and this is something that I discuss with people that are moving into the mid to upper end of the market, certainly more the upper end of the market, like the new I try and put it in the context of like a computer game. You unlock new characters. So what's it like going from? Because I imagine I haven't done anything super prime. I mean, where I am just doesn't exist. But what kind of? I'm not going to ask you to name any names, but what's the kind of difference between? Because you get obviously in the prime markets. I guess it's probably fairly similar to where you are, where you get your family where Mr. or Mrs. is earning well, and they're buying at 2-3 million. Your classic family. But then I feel like there's a few people I've dipped my toe in the water with. Sports people, celebrities, tech people. What about those? What sort of characters do you unlock at the upper end? And how do you relate and deal with them?
Yeah, some really interesting ones. There's a lot of people that you would want to spend a lot of time talking to, which I think is really cool. You can learn a lot out of some of these people. They're captains of industry, or they're business CEOs, or they've had storied careers. And sometimes obviously we Google everybody. If they come in and request a viewing on something that's 8 to 12 million quid, then you're going to Google who they are.
Yeah.
Sometimes you look at someone's history on LinkedIn or whatever, and you think, gee, that's a cool career. So there's some really interesting stuff from a business point of view. The sort of the sports market and the entertainment market is a funny one because, with exception, they typically aren't super prime.
Yeah.
They might be prime, and I mean, I would say a footballer's house is probably between 3.5 and maybe 7 or 8 as a fairly typical band. 7 or 8 if they've earned good money and they've done really well. Maybe the lower end if they're still doing quite well, obviously, but not quite as well as some of the other ones. And that market for them is fairly common because obviously the length of their career is shorter. They can only borrow for so long, and
of course,
the financing is a little bit more complicated. So you get to meet some really cool people, but it tends to be, I would say, more at the right up at that top end, business, tech, as I say, funnily enough, some crypto things in there and stuff, and just exciting, business points of view more than anything else, I think.
So how do you, obviously you kind of try and find common ground with these people, when you're kind of in the sitting room? One thing I found, certainly in the prime markets, is that people are a lot more data driven. Joe Bloggs flat above the Chippy, or Joe Bloggs' 3-bed semi. You walk around and they support Chelsea as well, and they've got the same dog, and my kids went to that school. All that stuff goes out the window, doesn't it? At the upper end,
it can do, yeah. It depends on the person. So when you get to the ultra rich, who this is one of 10 houses, they own a yacht somewhere and whatever, we might be dealing with them and someone who runs their family office, for example, who might be slightly more normal, dare I say, slightly more grounded. It might be that they have an in to us in some other way, or there's a connection where they've been referred across. It's very rare that someone's going to call in just off Google search, who can sell my £10 million plus home, and they'll call you. They'll often be referred to you because you've dealt with someone else that they know or whatever. So there's often a connection there as well. But I think a lot of the time they are normal people. They're no different in the sense that they still have a life the same as us. Still have to go to the shops, and they still have to drive a car and whatever. It might be a nicer car.
Yeah.
But they still have the same lives as we do. It's just that the values of what they're dealing with are higher. So I found they're usually willing to talk about it quite a lot. But some really lovely, down-to-earth clients who actually, I think one of the chaps inherited a lot of his money. He didn't necessarily go out and not that he doesn't earn it for himself, but you know what I mean. His family made generational wealth.
Yeah.
And he's more than happy to talk about it in a way that perhaps others might not be, because he realises how privileged he is and how lucky he is. And that's allowed him, therefore, to go and buy all kinds of cool toys that most people would bend over backwards to be allowed near. So, yeah.
Okay, and then so one of the things we're quite passionate about TCA, between me, Dave, and Ian, certainly, is how we market properties. So in, I guess, super prime, a lot of it's transferable, but how do you position a super prime property to attract the right caliber of buyer? What sort of marketing channels and tactics have been most successful for sort of the ultra luxurious homes?
Yeah, it's a case of making sure it's best in class. Now, we try and make a point of making sure that everything that we do is best in class. Don't get me wrong, as a brand, that's what we stand for, and it's something that we impress upon every single client that we're dealing with. But particularly in the super prime market, I like to have an idea and a marketing strategy for each property. So looking at who I think the target market is, looking at how that marketing can be adjusted to suit them. Property might have facilities or amenities that suits a certain market, focusing on that, having video content made for certain different bits. We've got a house on the market just under £6 million in Cobham, which is 2 seconds away from the Chelsea ground. It's got a full wellness suite on the top floor. It is professional grade in the sense that a footballer could use it. Yes, who I targeted it towards. It's a case of having an idea in mind on how you're going to pitch it, so that when someone sees it, they go, "Oh, that would suit me." With the super prime stuff in particular, it might be a little bit more lifestyle-y.
Yeah.
So it could be that, and I mentioned to you earlier on, I'm sort of making a plan for the marketing of this one at 12.5 at the moment. That will be far more lifestyle. It will be about where it is and the setting and the location and the views and what it would be like to live there, rather than look at this amazing house that's really expensive. It's look at the lifestyle you could have by being here.
Yeah.
And I think it shifts to a mindset for someone of, if I buy this as one of the few properties that I probably own, why would I want to spend time in this house? Why would I want to be there over being overseas or being on a yacht or whatever it may be? You need to give someone a reason to want to be there. And that becomes a more lifestyle-y sell than it does about just the detail of the house. But there's still an expectation with the house that it lives up to a certain quality.
Yeah. Okay. And so then when you've obviously marketed it, and so the next thing I'm really interested to hear about is, negotiation side. Obviously, in the super prime market, I guess, negotiations can be pretty intense, especially with sort of, high stakes and strong personalities involved.
Yeah.
How do you, obviously having experience in all ends of the market, how do you approach negotiation to ensure like the client to achieve the best outcome?
Yeah. Funnily, I don't think it's vastly different. And I think that's part of the reason I mentioned to you earlier on. I think it's so important that people who do want to step up to the prime and then the super prime markets do cut their teeth at that entry level, because actually doing a million deals at 150 grand is really useful learning. People still negotiate the same, though. If someone comes in a percent off an asking price and it's 10 million quid, that's quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
And actually, in comparison to where it might have been if you're selling a flat somewhere, then it can be a vast sum in comparison to what it would be elsewhere. I think people are often willing to wait longer for the right offer because they've got the money to wait effectively. But the super prime market in particular, is rare that property is A, their only asset, obviously, but B, their only home. So it could be that could sit for a while until they feel they're getting the right figure for it. A lot of it comes down to perhaps what they want or what they think it's worth, more than just £1 per square foot, because a lot of these houses are one of ones, and therefore it's more a case of the value, the intrinsic value of the location and views and finish and whatever else. It's harder to put an exact sum on something like that.
I was going to ask you that, actually. That was going to kind of be my next question, was that, when we value sort of prime homes here, we use a lot of data-driven insights with, what pound per square foot is in the area. You try and approach it almost like a surveyor would. So, what is, for example, we use something called Data Loft, and looking at, if we're doing, I don't know, prime in this area between 1 and 3.5 million or 4 million, whatever it happens to be. Sometimes you have to go back 5-10 years to find comparable properties, in size, because like you said, a lot of the houses tend to be sort of one of ones, and what I try and do so the method behind my madness sometimes with those sort of homes is we'll look at you know, that house was 7,000 square feet. It sold 5 years ago. Well, if we tracked the house price index as to what that's done over time in that area, well, okay, well, that's been 33%. That would bring us out at £585 a square foot or whatever in today's market. Looking at it, this house is 7,000. So we think it's going to be, you know, maybe 3 is where it kind of starts. But as you kind of alluded to there, you know, the spec and the finish. And one of the things I found, certainly at the upper end, is that people will pay for the finish because they just literally want to go, here's my money, give me the keys, and I want to move on.
Yeah, very definitely.
And the question I was going to ask you was, so, you know, is that pretty much transferable to super prime? You know, how do you go about valuing a super prime house?
Yeah, it is to an extent. You're absolutely right. And actually, I think the basis of what, you know, the process you would go through to value something at 2 to 3 million, the process that I'd go through to value something at 20 is probably no different. I remember very clearly walking around a house that was on the market at 20 million and saying to the chap who constructed it, it feels a bit heavy at 20. And he went, what should it be? 19 and a half? And I'm thinking, well, I don't really know. It sort of depends on what someone's willing to pay. And this house was gaudy, and the guy built a Frankie and Benny's in the basement, and it was bonkers. But someone ended up coming in and paying. I think they paid over the asking price for it. Yeah, I think they paid 22 off the top of my head. So it really does depend on who you're selling it to. And Trevor's got a fantastic story about a house he sold near Cobham for a very sort of regular client of ours. And he got something like 2,200 a square foot. That area is high.
Yeah.
It's high for most areas, but for that area in particular is high. You'd expect to pay maybe £1,000 a square foot on one of the private roads. So it was astronomical money for what it was.
Yeah.
And we had someone fly over from overseas, walked into the house. I think he'd worked out who was selling it, and that held some weight for the buyer. And I'll be honest, I think Trevor made up a number and the guy was willing to pay it. But sometimes it is down to what the market's willing to pay, and it's not down to the pound per square foot. And whilst I'm selling at 12.5 is expensive for what it is on square footage, but you're paying for a view as good as you get in the south of France, and someone's going to come in and go, I can see Goodwood, I can see the sea, I'm 30 miles inland, that's quite cool, I'm willing to pay the money for it.
And that's the thing, isn't it? That prime and super prime markets, it's less necessarily about what it's worth, quote unquote, in terms of, you know, a surveyor says X, and it's more about what somebody wants and what someone's prepared to pay to get what they want.
Yeah, it's a trophy asset.
100%,
yeah,
100%. I get that.
If someone's willing to pay the money for it, then great. And if they're not, and we haven't marketed it right, and I go back to what I'm saying about it being best in class, we need to make sure that our marketing is absolutely on point. And I think, and you know, again, being slightly big-headed about it, you go onto our website and you look at how we market the properties.
Yes.
We know it looks good.
Yes.
And we want someone to go on and go, yeah, I could see my house alongside this house in Barbados at 30 million, or this tower in Dubai at 184 million, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I want someone to go, I want my house there too. And they're going to think, yeah, you know what, I pay the money for that because it's going to be handled right, and it's going to look right, and it's going to instill a buyer to go, I'll pay that premium for it.
That's one of the things I guess we preach at TCA is, you know, how do you look? You know, if someone has seen a listing of yours online or heard of you, the first thing they're going to do is go to your website. And if they land on your website, you know, and they've got a, you know, 3, 5, 10 million pound house to sell, and all they can see on your site is, you know, 110 grand flats and, you know, 3-bed semis, they're probably not going to pick up the phone and call you because they're going to think, you know, is this the right person for my home? Whereas if you land on TPORE's website, you know, the branding is obviously very high end. You know, the properties that you've got and you represent, the clients you represent, you know, it's got that air. So if someone's got a certain type of home, you know, that niche that you're in, people obviously will naturally be attracted to that. So just kind of, I suppose, going full circle and bringing it all back together. For someone that, what advice would you give to somebody that, you know, either an agency owner that wants to get into the mid to high end, or an agent that is, because we do get people that are employed that listen to this podcast as well. We've had a few people that, you know, have been inspired to either jump ship and go self-employed and
Yeah.
work their way up through. So as somebody that's gone, I guess similar journey in some ways. I'm not in super prime, but having climbed, I did probably 5-6 years at Countrywide myself and worked the ranks. Having gone from selling similar to yourself, 100 grand flats to, prime real estate.
Yeah.
What advice would you give for any agents looking to break into higher value listings? What sort of skills, mindsets, partnerships do you recommend they need to sort of cultivate to succeed?
Yeah, I think partnerships and networking is key. I think there's three main things: partnerships and networking, and meeting as many people as you possibly can, getting your name out there, building a personal brand.
Yeah,
being beyond just I'm an employee number.
yes,
058313 or whatever I was at Savills. Give yourself a bit more than just a barcode, and I think it's important that you have that. You want people to associate you with the property market, not the property market with you.
Yeah,
That's the way I always read it, and so I think that's important. Secondly, have your principles and stick to them. So I read a book called Principles by Ray Dalio. If you haven't read it, I recommend to everybody.
Write that down.
It is life changing. It's about this guy's life principles, how he applies them to work, and it gives you. You can literally copy his if you wanted to, but it gives you a really good way of sort of working out what's important to you and how you apply it to your life.
Yeah,
and sticking to it. You don't want to be seen as someone who's going to say one thing and do something else. Stick to your principles, and that reputation will then precede you. And the third thing is get as much experience as you can.
Yeah.
I think it's super important, actually, and I would advise people who are getting into the industry to go to a high street firm, cut your teeth, learn how to do it, and then if you're good at it, go out and do it for yourself. If you back it yourself, go off and earn money for yourself. But learn how to do it where you're just expected to do volume, because every transaction is going to teach you something.
Yes.
And I think that 110 grand flat above a chippy might be a really complicated lease with a flying freehold and a unmortgageable because it's above a chip shop, and buyers coming from overseas and the funds aren't here and all sorts. But you'll get to the end of that process and you'll think, oh, I've dealt with a lot with that one. But you've learned how to deal with these bits so that when you're selling a freehold detached family house next to a school that goes through in 4 weeks, you think that was easy.
Yeah, 100%.
And you want it to feel like that. You want to feel like you can put your knowledge onto a client's sale so that they're benefiting from your experience, because they're paying for your experience, not just your connection.
And I think that's the other thing. The other thing I think, is, I guess, a lot of synergies between all of us is, we've started out and done the lower end stuff. You don't have to be privately educated, went to Eton, and your parents own multi-billion pound estates to sell like prime and super prime properties. To get into that premium market, you've just got to be bloody good with people, work hard, and learn, like you say, learn the ropes. So one thing that I suppose to end on, to ask you a question is, and a bit of a deep one. If you, just on the future of super prime, if you look ahead sort of the next 5 to 10 years, how do you envisage the super prime market evolving in terms of buyer preferences, digital marketing, and sort of global competition?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. At the moment, a lot of the super prime market are more global than they might have been previously. I think part of that is governmental change, tax change. I say tax change not just here, but overseas. We're seeing a lot of people move to Dubai.
Yeah.
That's a big, big market. And actually, a number of houses that we would usually have sold to people within the UK, I think the buyers are in Dubai.
Yeah.
But we're speaking to a lot of sellers who go, Matthew, sell my house for me. I'm moving across to the UAE. And you think, another one. How long that lasts, I don't know. I mean, my mindset has always been that the idea of that being a tax haven effectively can't last forever. If it were me and I was the local government there, I'd get everybody in and I'd put tax on it for a year and I'd have a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I think that can't last forever. People will come back. Not everyone is going to move and stay there forever. There will be people that will come back again. So, and that's cyclical.
Yeah,
it's just opened up a new market. So whereas it might typically have been your New Yorks, your LA, your Marbella or whatever it's been over the past few years, Ibiza and whatnot, that super prime market now in the UAE is a big one. But I think people start to come back from there. The old mindset of people who worked in financial services who disappeared off to the Far East,
Yeah.
over the past 20, 30 years, Shanghai and Macau and Hong Kong and whatnot, who then came back again and live in the area now and live in nice big houses. That was cyclical, and that will happen again.
Mm-hmm.
So the future of it from a marketing perspective, I think people are cottoning on to the fact that you have to have better quality content than the high street firms are offering, and actually in particular the big corporates are offering. Part of the reason that I saw a shift in the market and I took the plunge to go work for myself and teamed up with the private office is that I don't think what the big corporate firms are doing is good enough anymore.
Yeah.
I really don't. And just putting a set of photos online and having a load of foreign desks and whatnot isn't as impactful as spending the money on really good marketing and making sure that it's going to be as visible as it can be. Because, Rightmove is not the be-all and end-all. It's a tool, but it's very definitely not the be-all and end-all, especially for that top end of the market. It needs to be visible in other places than just there.
Do you think a lot of people, obviously, given where you've come from, are a little bit disillusioned with, if you work in a Savills or a KF or wherever, are frustrated with the lack of change and the lack of modern methods being implemented?
Yeah,
because
I know they are, and I should hope that they are actually.
Yeah,
I really do, because I talk to a lot of agents all the time. For the reason that you run this community group on WhatsApp is because it allows me to talk to people.
Yeah,
I like talking to people. I like the sound of my own voice, and I like I like hearing what people are saying about stuff. But it's consistent that the message is the same from everyone within the corporate world, that they don't think that what the corporate companies are doing is quite good enough. And secondly, that they're going to change, because they're not. They're oil tankers. The person who's in charge of it is a custodian who will see it through for their time, and any change they make won't be impacted for 3 or 4 people down the line, and they don't want to be seen as the person who's messed it up. There will never be industry shifting change from a firm like that. It just can't happen.
I think there's a lot of people that I've seen, obviously including yourself, that have left big offices, private offices, country offices, where obviously the earning potential is capped because they're stuck in their ways. But yeah, like you said, it's quite aptly an oil tanker where there's teams and processes and sign-offs that have got to happen, and a lot of top talent has left, and like for example, Trevor setting up the private office, you leaving to work with Trevor as well and do your own thing there, and obviously the other associates that work under that umbrella as well. And I could just see it, because that I feel like a lot of the, and I don't know if you'd agree with this, but a lot of the big, like your Savills, your KFs, they underutilize their superpower.
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
don't use their network. They just rely on Rightmove.
Yeah, it's a brand that it should. The brand of Savills as a whole is so powerful as a name. We'd get a report every year saying how big it was within the super brands rating and the index they do every year. It's a massive power, but I never felt like it was utilised enough personally.
No, I agree.
There might be people who disagree in different parts of the country, but for me, I never felt like it was utilised enough. It should have been plastered on absolutely everything and used as a tool, and I never felt like it was. I always felt like there were people doing it better than we were, which is crazy when you think it's supposed to be the number one name. I felt like there were people doing it better than we were. So.
And the thing is, you'd think with that sort of budget behind them, I mean, like where I am locally, there's, they're not Savills, but they are what I suppose would be considered historically as the agent in the upper end of the market. They invested hundreds of thousands in newspaper advertising, print advertising back in the day, and they really kind of made their name as the agent for upper end premium homes where we are. And we've seen a shift as well here where I am. A lot of their best people have left and either set up on their own or joined different brokerages, and all because they're very much similar, I guess, to the synergies of Savills. With big marketing teams and sign-offs, and even people in senior management positions and director level decision makers where. That's the way it's always been done, so that's the way it always will be.
Yeah, it's not anymore.
Exactly. Not
Yeah,
pivoting on
definitely not.
social media, not doing video marketing, not actually leveraging networks and, going outside of the box. And it's just allowed people like me to come along in the last sort of 5, 6 years. And, we grew at the 53% in the million plus market last year in
Yeah,
market share.
which is amazing.
And it's only growing because,
Yeah.
we're doing a lot of the right things. And I think going back to Savills quickly, they do a lot of the right things in terms of, their market reports. They purvey themselves as the experts.
The research, it's one thing I can't fault. It's headed up by a chap called Lucy and Cook. The research division there is exceptional.
That's incredible,
It's amazing. And I still read his reports.
Yeah.
He does a load of, yeah, exactly. He does a load of really, really good stuff. And actually, massive respect for him and his team. And we dealt with them a load of times. They give us so much useful information. There are parts of that business that are amazing.
Yes.
But I always felt like you're absolutely right there. Thinking outside the box is risky. And if you get it wrong, then it reflects badly on the brand. And then that's what they're there to do effectively. That top tier management is protect the brand, not think outside the box and push it. So it's always very safe. And I think, unfortunately to their detriment. And it's not, that isn't just Savills, that's the industry as a whole.
Yeah, agreed.
That's KF, that's Struts, that's Hamptons. It's the same, that top tier of agency, unfortunately, it's always been very safe in that sense. And I think that's where, as a firm, we've been able to come in and shake things up a little bit. We've got some amazing stock on.
Yes.
We've won things over big name firms. There is a reason that people are leaving that top tier across the board, not just Savills, but your KF and your Struts and your Hamptons and whatever else as well, and going off to work for themselves or for other brokerage firms. There's a reason people are doing that. And it's the fact that they can, if they're good enough, they can earn more money. They can deal with who they want to, where they want to. And they can market things how they want to market things and not feel restricted or like they have to fit into a structure that's been put in place by somebody else. So it's exciting. I think the future of the upper end of the prime and the super prime market is in good hands in that sense. Albeit it's my hands to an extent, and that's a bit big-headed of me. But it's exciting to see where it goes over the next few years, and actually it will be nice to look back on in 5 years' time and see how much impact it's had. There are others who do a good job at this end of the market. Your DDREs, for example, who have broken into things. Full respect for the fact they've broken into a market and they deal with a lot of stuff above 10 million quid, and they're doing their own thing and in their own way. And I respect that.
When's the TPORE Netflix special coming? That's got to be next week.
Yeah, don't count on it.
No.
I think the one thing from our perspective, we make a point of the property tours for us being about the property and highlighting that, and we do a bit of content. We do a bit of content of the day in the life of us in the office, or the day in the life of Trevor, who's a very busy guy. It's quite interesting seeing what he gets up to. I don't know if I'm cut out for Netflix.
Oh, mate, it's been a really great podcast. We lost Ian as he had to dash out into the office. He messaged and apologised and appreciate everything that you said. And he's wrote a really good few useful notes he said down to me. So thank you ever so much for joining us.
Quite all right.
Just before you go, do you want to give yourself a plug on social media and talk about, the off-market network if anyone wants to apply to join? Or
very kind. I'm at Surrey Hill Prime on all my socials, so feel free to give me a follow on that. The off-market community you mentioned is at offmarket.community. You can message anybody who's in it and have a conversation joining up. It's over 200 brokers strong now. There's definitely some money to be made in there, but it's a nice way to network with like-minded people as well. So do reach out and have a chat. And even if you just want to come in and see what it's all about, then feel free to talk to me.
Yeah, and it's an excellent place for, if you want to give your clients' properties extra exposure. If you've run out of ideas and you've exhausted Rightmove, social media, there'll be agents that listen to this that don't maybe do social media as well, but are learning and open to learning and open new ideas. The off-market group's a fantastic place to kind of connect with like-minded people that are open to collaboration and want to do agency the right way. But it's also, yes, you're going to have to give away part of your fee. Obviously I'm very passionate about driving fees upwards and getting, 2%, 1.5%, 2%. And I think that's where agency should be. And it's certainly a lot easier to do it in the upper end space. And If you have to give away 0.5% fee on a £2 million house, well, look at it as, 0.5% gained and a sale achieved, and then use that as experience for the next time, So check Matthew out on LinkedIn. As you said, Surrey Hills Prime, you said, didn't you, on
That's the
Instagram?
one.
Yeah, give him a follow. And if you enjoyed the podcast, share it with a friend. So really appreciate your time, mate. And we'll see you all next week.
Cool. Thank you, mate. Take care.